Let the words of my mouth, the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, we're on the heels of Thanksgiving, as you all well know, and come to that probably most exciting part of the church year. Not only the exciting part of the church year, but basically an exciting part for everybody at this particular time, at least Christian folks. This is the one time of the year that the church and the secular world has something in common as we point to a common day, Christmas. Of course, for the church, it's the celebration of the birth of Jesus. For the secular world, it's the shopping time of the year. Black Friday is just past. It's what is called the holiday season, is it not? The holiday season. I don't like that term. For me, I want it to be the Christmas season. And I think for the church, that's what it ought to be, not a holiday season. I don't like to get cards that say Happy Holidays. So if you're sending me a card, don't send one that says Happy Holidays. I've gotten one Christmas card so far. We've gotten one. And the words in that card: God's peace and blessings be with you this Christmas season. Thank you, Sheila, for that card. If you haven't sent your cards yet, make sure they have something to do with Christmas, not just the holiday season. It's one of the times we have a chance to testify to our faith and what this is all about. This is more than a holiday season. A little over a week ago, I was at a meeting over at Thrivent Financial for Lutherans in Peoria as we plan for the next Funds for Leaders in Ministry golf tournament, which will be March 10th of this next year. Last year, we raised for scholarships for seminary students $14,000 in that tournament. And so this is a chance for me to remind you of that, you golfers, that this is a chance for you to help with those kind of things. I say that because at that meeting, Clark Kruger, who is the head financial officer for Thrivent in Peoria, said, there's going to be a Christmas parade in Glendale. A Christmas parade in Glendale. Glendale, the city of lights, they were just turned on this past weekend. And as he said that, one of the people in our committee said, "You mean it's going to be a holiday parade, don't you?" And he said, "No, it is a Christmas parade in Glendale. And it's called a hometown Christmas parade." And Clark handed us each a little brochure about that. And at the top of that, and you can't read it, but it says, "Let's celebrate the true star of Christmas." The hometown Christmas parade. And then it says, Christmas isn't just another holiday. The birth of Jesus is the heart of Christmas, so it should be a celebration like no other. That parade is this coming Saturday down Glendale Boulevard in Glendale at 10 a.m. It is a Christmas parade. Sunday after Thanksgiving, the beginning of the season of Advent, as we lighted one of the candles on the Advent wreath today. We don't do a whole lot about Advent, but it's kind of hard not to get into the Christmas season already. But I'm sure you've heard some Christmas music already, have you not? This year on November 12th, in my car with the satellite radio, the station that we had on had only Christmas music on it. Only Christmas. November 12th. It wasn't even Thanksgiving yet. When I pulled into my space at the church, I left my car running with the radio on. I went in and I got Tom Unis, our organist, says, "You got to come out and listen to something." And he got in my car and he listened to Christmas music. And I said to Tom, if the secular world can play Christmas music before Christmas, we need to do that in the church too. And so today we sang "O Little Town of Bethlehem," a Christmas carol. In our outreach monthly newsletter, you got a schedule of all kinds of concerts that are going on, and you see a couple in our bulletin today. Those concerts starting this next weekend are not going to be singing Advent music. They're going to be singing Christmas music as we go into this Christmas season. Someone said to me recently that it seems like Christmas decorations are going up earlier and earlier, and those of us who drive at night around here and you go past the Eye Institute at the corner of Del Webb and Bell, those lights have been up for over a month right now. Many people have not taken their Christmas lights down from last year. They just unplugged them. That's not a bad idea because I have to put mine up once again. And it's time to put our tree up. Now our son Scott is here. Scott, you remember you prayed for him a lot when he was going through his heart surgery? He's sitting up in the front row right here, doing really good. But he's going to help us put up our Christmas tree this year because it's one of those that comes in 3 pieces. And then you got to plug in all the connections to make sure that all the lights work on those things. Before I moved to Arizona, I never had one of those kind of trees. We always went out, Scott, did we not? And we cut a tree. We even had a chainsaw to go out and cut our Christmas tree. And we waited till we got the perfectly shaped tree. But it's not Christmas yet. It is Advent. And I remind you that the word Advent means the coming. And of course, as we go towards Christmas, we remember the coming of Jesus in Bethlehem 2,000 years ago. But Advent also has an emphasis on the coming of Jesus once again. We call that the second coming, the second Advent. And we confess in both of our creeds that he will come again to judge the living and the dead. Advent is not one of my favorite seasons because it's hard not to get into Christmas during Advent, and I don't like to preach about the second coming. That's not my thing, yet it's something that we believe in. We believe that there will be an end to all things, even as God made a beginning to all things. It's been 2,000 years, as I said, since God brought Jesus into this world. We've been celebrating that for about 1,500 years because it took about 500 years before Christmas became a festival in the church. But Jesus promised that he would come again. And his disciples believed that. But they believed it would happen in their lifetime. They believed it would happen while they were still alive. They were positive. But they were wrong. The gospel writers were wrong. How about me telling you that? Those who wrote part of our Bible were actually wrong. Because it didn't happen in their lifetime. And that's why we have the Gospels. As the apostles started dying off, they began to realize if we don't write something down, those after us won't have any testimony of who Jesus was all about. And so the Gospels were written. The Apostle Paul expected Jesus to come during his lifetime and during his early ministry particularly. He told people, if you're not married, don't bother. There's no time for that. He said, make no provision for the flesh to gratify its desires. He saw no need in his early ministry to plan for the future because there wasn't much future left according to his belief at that particular time. And if the Apostle Paul were writing to us today with his belief in his early ministry, he'd say, when you're buying Christmas gifts, don't buy anything that's going to be used for a long period of time because there isn't going to be any long period of time. There won't be any Christmas next year. But Paul was wrong. He had to correct that. And he had to tell some of the people who had heard him, who had stopped working and were just standing around waiting for Jesus to come again, to go back to work and get about their business because the time was not just then. A lot has happened since that particular time. And people have been talking about when the second coming is going to be for almost 2,000 years, the end of the world. It hasn't happened, and yet they keep predicting when it's going to be. And I'm sure you've all heard that. You've heard people give those dates that have come and gone, and the world still goes on. People who have picked a date, and after that date didn't happen, they tried again. It's kind of like our old GPS. When I'd make a wrong turn, recalculating. And so many who have predicted the end of the world have had to recalculate. One of the most renowned predictionists of the end of the world was a man called Hal Lindsey. He wrote a book, The Late Great Planet Earth, and this was about over 40 years ago, wasn't it, Lane, that took place? And here we still are. He made lots of bucks on his book, and he made lots of bucks on his lectures that he gave. And I remember when I lived in San Luis Obispo, California, and there was going to be a youth gathering in San Francisco. I took a group of our youth to San Francisco, and it wasn't something put on by the ELCA or the ALC, but put on by a different group. And the keynote speaker was Hal Lindsey. And I sat in that auditorium that night and listened to Hal Lindsey. I absolutely got nauseous. I got physically nauseated, and I had to walk out of that auditorium because of that. His prediction of the last times, and here we are. But people listen. For some reason, they want to hear that. At our pastor's Tuesday Bible study, and you guys weren't there for that, we talked about this text from the 24th chapter of Matthew. And one of the pastors who's been around Phoenix for quite a while told us that some years ago in Phoenix, there was a group that convinced people that the world was coming to an end and that they should go with them to Bumblebee. Have you been to Bumblebee? There's nothing there in Bumblebee. And people went out to Bumblebee because the world was going to come to an end. In the mid-'70s, when I was a campus pastor and a pastor of the church in San Luis Obispo, California, where California Polytechnic Institute is, in the middle of the night, in the first week of finals, I got a call from, I forget it was with the dean of students or the vice president of the college, who said, "Chuck, can you come up onto campus? There's a group here who's trying to convince our students to drop out of school, give up everything, and go with them." A group called the Children of God, and they had a yellow bus to take anybody who would go with them. I spent the entire night on campus, and I talked to some of the students who had been confronted by the Children of God. I talked to some of them about the importance of seeing God's presence in our world right now. Some of them were convinced that it was not a time that the world was coming to an end, not a time for them to go. Others of them left, that got on that bus and left all of their earthly possessions there. Some of the parents found out I had talked to their students who had gone away, called me and tried to ask me, what was happening, where they went. I had no particular idea. People buy into that. People buy into that. And we believe that Jesus will come again. We're about to celebrate his first coming. That baby in a manger of Bethlehem that had been predicted by the prophets before. And yet, when the time came, nobody knew that it was coming. And there was nobody there in Bethlehem to welcome Jesus. The end, the second advent. God promised that would happen. But when? I don't care. I don't care. And I let you know today that the people who predict the end of the world, the second coming, don't believe Jesus. So if you ever hear that from somebody, remember that person does not believe Jesus. In fact, there are people who say they know more than Jesus. The gospel today that Bud read, Matthew 24, are words that Jesus spoke about the end of the world. It begins with verse 36 before our lesson starts. Jesus has been talking about the end of the world. And the disciples say to him, "Tell us, when will this be? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?" And Jesus says, "I don't know. I don't know." And then the words of the gospel. in answer to that question, where Jesus said, "But about that day and hour, no one knows, neither the angels of heaven nor the Son, but only the Father." Only God, only the Father. It's God's secret. So how can people try to outthink God and know the time? And again, whenever you hear somebody telling that the world is coming to an end, remember, they don't believe Jesus, who said, "I have no idea when that will be." Only God knows. We cannot outcalculate God. And you know what? Maybe God hasn't even decided yet when that will be. Maybe God is watching what we do with this creation, what we do with this world right now. And then he'll make up his mind when that will come to an end. The bottom line of today's message is care less about when the end will be and make the most of the time that we have. Make the most of this creation that God has given us. God is not just present at the end, but is present and active right now. And like I say, I don't care when the end will be, and I hope you don't. For in a sense, for me, the second coming has already happened. It has already happened. We call that day Pentecost. 50 days after Easter, after the Ascension, when the Holy Spirit, God's presence, comes to the disciples and us. That's the assurance that God is here with us now and present now. God is with us in His Spirit. That's no secret.